Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure that I have an opportunity to present this very simple project, but it's still very exciting. I would call this the grid computing for dummy. So let me tell you why do we need to do this project. So right now we live in the omics era. Now we can do biology as a whole, as a system, instead of focusing on one small specific thing. Now we can study all genetic material in the cell. We call it genomics. We can do the same thing with protein. We call it proteomics. And then when we combine our knowledge in genomics, in proteomics, how protein interact with one another, how the gene interact with one another, and then how gene and protein interact with one another, we have a term called interactomics. And for the applied science, for example, now we have pharmacogenomics. We know the genomics profile of the patient. We can use that to design the drug regimen to maximize the efficiency while limit the side effects. But for the good thing in the omics era, we now facing with massive amount of data. For example, in my field, we're talking about DNA sequencing, genome sequencing, for example. The largest you can get from the market now is from Illumina high-seq system, where in one run you will get 1 million base per run. And if you want to do multiple genomes, like for example you want to analyze or do something with 1,000 genome project with all the data they have, you have to deal with 100 million terabytes of the data. That means now your laptop computer, your desktop computer will not be able to deal with this amount of data anymore. You will need high performance or high throughput computing to analyze the data. So how do you obtain those very high computing power one from? If you're rich or your institution is rich, you can buy one. For example, this is IBM Sequoia in the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in the US. For this setup, it will cost you $600 million, not including the maintenance and the electricity cost. You can buy the cheaper one, but it still costs you tens of thousands of dollars to set up. Or if you know how much you want to use, and you want to pay how much you want to use, you can rent the space, rent the runtime on the cloud computing service like from Amazon EC2. But today I'd like to give you another option is to, why don't we build one? Actually, some of you might actually have already had one in your campus, but you don't know it. We can build it with the system called BOINC. BOINC is from Berkeley Open Infrastructure for Network Computing. This is the middleware. It helps deal with the volunteer computing and grid computing. But for today, we're going to focus on the grid computing. The system is free and it's open source. That means you can download it for free, modify it wherever you want, and then use it. And it is multiple platform. It means BOINC can deal with and almost any kind of OS that the client machine is using. BOINC is best known for this project, the Set It at Home project. This is a project that they recruit all computers all around the world to download the application to help them analyze the radio signal from radio telescope, to help them find the pattern that might be generated by the extraterrestrial intelligence. So how BOINC works is the simple map reduce system. I mean, you have one very big input. You split into smaller input, put that onto the server, and the server will package that into work unit. Then you send that work unit to the client, and you can do that 100, 1,000 times simultaneously at many clients, and then the client will send the output back to the server, and then the server has a system to validate it, and then get the most accurate result back to you. But I won't go into the detail how it works because we don't have time. So we want to try this with our system. So how do we do it? We decided we should use BOINC with BLAST. BLAST is why we decided to use BLAST. BLAST is very simple program. I mean, most of us here know how to use it. It has very well documentations. And then what we want to do is that we want to do sequence alignment. We want to test it with the very huge data, large data. It is the DNA sequencing from human genome. There's a training set downloaded from Genome in the Bottle Consortium. It's from the Illumina high-seq platform. It contains 4 million reads. So we will not be able to use BLAST to analyze these many reads at a time. So we split the file to multiple sites from the first 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 reads. So for that, we could do analysis on the desktop computer to up to 1,000 reads, and then for the high-performance computer up to 100,000 reads. So what happens if you use the BLAST on your desktop, and we limit our desktop to 1 processing thread with the memory of 1 gigabyte. That is what 1 work unit in Boing will face. We run that up to 1,000 read and for a triplicate, and then we found that it would take about 2 hours to complete this. And if you use that for 4 million reads, you need almost 1 year to complete the project. So for the HPC, we were lucky to borrow one. This is a smaller model, but it still costs more than $30,000, not including maintenance, of course. We used that and ran it in triplicate again, up to 100,000 read, and it took about 14 hours. So if you do that for 4 million reads, it would take about a month to complete it. So now we want to use Boing. We were lucky that remember I told you that many of you might already have the HPCs or HTC sitting somewhere on your campus. This is it. We have the Raj Computer Training Center. We were able to access one room with 50 PCs, and this is the specification. We can use Boing to connect this together to create a grid system. One of the machines could run 1 to 4 works at a time. And this is useful because we were allowed to use it during the off hours, during like overnight, no one using it. We just tap the resource during the night. And we decided that we want to run 500,000 reads at a time. That is like 5,000 units of the work. This is 5 times as much as we test with the HPC. Okay, so what happened? So this is the result. We could finish that only overnight, 14 hours. For the same size of data, if you do it with the HPC that we borrow, it would take 74 hours. And for the PC, it will be 1,000 hours. This is the histogram of how each work unit take to process our data, our small chunk of input. You can see most of the work unit, you need 17 minutes to process it. And the fastest one will be 5 minutes. And we have some slowest one that will take more than 15 minutes. And we check this from the delay of data transfer. So one essential thing that you want to use Boing is that you need to have a good network connection that connect your client machine to your server, that you have a good rate of data transfer. And then before you set up your Boing project, you will have this checklist. You have to know your client. You have to know what kind of operating system and specification of your client is. And then you have to know whether or not it's going to be volunteer system or grid system. So in our case, it's the grid system. For volunteer system, it's like you ask someone or recruit someone to download the application onto their system to help you analyze the data, but you have no means to modify their machines. But for the grid, you have all the power to access each computer and then modify it however you want. And then you have to know your job. your job needs to be independent parallelism. That means that once you split the input and send it to each client will process the work itself. There will be no communication between each client. And then you have to know that your application that you're going to use is compatible to your client. In this case, we use BLAST, and then we decided to match the BLAST with our clients. And you have to have some skill. Because Boing is built on Unix Linux system, you need to know some Unix command line. But there's quite good documentation. You can do some copy and paste as about the command line. And it will work much better if you know some script language and glue language like Python. So, but in our case, we set up the Boing on the Debian system, and we use Python to help us process the input and output data. But in the future, we try to put everything up to the GitHub so anyone can look at how we did it and then can set it up easily. So for the future directions, this is the very beginning of the project. So we want to just want to put everything we learned how to set up our first project onto the GitHub so anyone can look at that and set it up at their own campus. And we want to make it various. We want to try other applications like simulation, data mining, anything else. But maybe first we will try to work with a Python-based program first. If anyone wants to test their program, and you can contact us. And we want to make it expanding. We want to include more clients machine, and also include the volunteer machine, like a computer in the office of Siraj Hospital. So finally, I would like to thank the most important person, Watanai Ko, over there. He is the one who helped me set up the project. Part of the project is a part of his master thesis. And also like to thank Dr. Prapat Suryapon of Division of Bioinformatics and Data Management for Research, who is the main mentor of this project. And I'm working with biotech and also Siraj Hospital in this unit called Division of Dengue Hemorrhagic Fever Research Unit. And finally, I'd like to thank Kun Panya, who helped us access the computer training center and help us set up the system. Thank you for your attention. I'll take any question.
I do have